The brick didn't come out of nowhere. My dad had been holding it the whole time, just pacing the edge of the driveway while I screamed and clutched my knees on the gravel. I could still hear the echo of my sister's voice in my head, screeching about how I shoved her first. That was a lie, but lies always worked in that house, especially when they came out of April's mouth. "She started it," she sobbed, pointing at me with those crocodile tears she'd perfected by age 10. I wasn't crying, not even when I felt the brick crack bone. Not even when I looked down and saw my knees twisted in a way knees weren't supposed to twist. Dad dropped the brick like it disgusted him. "Now you don't run that mouth no more, huh?" he muttered. "Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." Then Mom stepped outside with a cup of coffee like she'd been watching the whole thing from the window. She didn't even ask what happened. She just laughed and said, "That's what useless things deserve." I remember everything about that moment. The smell of oil-stained driveway, the heat rising off the pavement, the way my breath stuttered like my lungs forgot what to do. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. It wasn't just the pain. It was knowing they didn't see me as human. I was 15 when the real hate began. By 25, it was just a routine. April would provoke, I'd react, they'd punish. Always physical, always cruel. But that day on the driveway, that was different. Something in me broke. Not just bones, something deeper. They didn't call an ambulance. My mom tossed me a bag of frozen peas like she was doing me a favor. I dragged myself inside, alone, leaving a trail of blood across the living room tiles. My sister made a show of stepping over it like she was avoiding a spilled drink. "You're gonna ruin the rug," she said, wrinkling her nose. I spent the next 3 days in my room, knees swollen and dark purple. No hospital, no painkillers. Just silence, and their voices laughing downstairs about how some kids just don't know their place. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't even cry. But I planned. I studied the ceiling fan above my bed, counting the blades again and again. I stared at my knees, waiting for the pain to dull. I memorized the click of the hallway floorboards and which ones creaked when they passed my door. I took it all in, quietly. The morning I stood up without screaming, I knew what I needed to do. They had taken everything, my voice, my movement, my sense of safety, but I was going to take back something far worse. Not with a scream, not with a lawsuit, and definitely not with forgiveness. I was going to make them feel what it was like. To be completely worthless. The bruises faded, the pain didn't. Every time I bent my knees, they cracked like old wood. Every time I saw a red brick, my body tensed. And every time April smiled at me with that smug, perfect face, I wanted to vanish into smoke. But I didn't. I stayed. I studied. I played the quiet one again. By 26, I was still in that house. My knees had healed into something stiff, but usable. My dad thought he'd taught me a lesson. Mom acted like I'd grown out of my emotional drama. And April? She got everything. A new car, a travel fund, a personal trainer who came to the house. She walked around like she owned air. One night I heard her bragging to a friend on speakerphone. "No, I don't work. Daddy says I don't need to 'cause I'll inherit everything anyway. He said, we're not splitting things with the cripple." Cripple. She meant me. I didn't flinch. I smiled. They had no idea I'd been working nights at the local warehouse under a different name. No idea I was taking business classes online in the hours they thought I was just sleeping off depression. No idea that I'd already started collecting copies of their property deeds, debt balances, and, most importantly, the full list of their assets they'd been hiding from taxes for years. You see, Dad was stupid, but not so stupid he filed everything under his real name. He used April's. Everything was in her name. The car, the house, the safe deposit box at the bank downtown. That gave me options. The plan came together on a Tuesday. April had another tantrum and poured her green smoothie over my backpack because I breathed too loud in the kitchen. Dad laughed. Mom took a photo. "Frame this," she giggled, "for when she finally crawls away for good." I said nothing. The next day, I woke up early and left the house before anyone noticed. Dressed in black, hoodie up, I walked to the next town over and rented a storage unit. Inside it, 3 massive boxes. Paperwork, screenshots, signatures. I'd been collecting them for 2 years. That afternoon, I sent out the first package. Not to the police. Not to the IRS. But to every single one of my dad's creditors, and April's fake landlord, and the woman Mom had been secretly funneling donations to for her nonprofit, which, by the way, was a glorified slush fund they used to look charitable. By the end of the week, all their bills doubled, their accounts froze. April got a furious call from her supposed landlord asking where the rent had gone. Dad accused Mom. Mom accused April. April threatened me. But I was already gone. I moved into a tiny apartment across town under a new name, still close enough to watch everything unravel. From afar, I saw them flail. My mom showed up to the bank and screamed until security was called. My dad drove to April's gym and demanded her assets back, yelling about betrayal in the parking lot. April locked herself in the bathroom for 2 days. But none of that compared to what came next. Because the next envelope I sent was to April herself. Inside was a photo of me, holding the brick. I'd taken it from the backyard months ago. And below the photo, one sentence written in her handwriting, photocopied from one of the forged inheritance forms. She doesn't deserve anything. She knew what it meant. She knew who did this. And she knew I wasn't finished. April didn't speak to anyone for days. At first, I thought she might crumble, maybe confess, but no. She posted a photo of herself on Instagram standing by the pool with a glass of champagne, captioned, "Unbothered, blessed, better." The internet believed it. So did Mom and Dad. But I didn't send that photo for fear. I sent it as a warning. That was phase 1. Phase 2 started at dawn 3 weeks later. That morning, Dad stormed into the backyard yelling. His prized red sports car was missing. The one he told everyone was his first love. Mom blamed April. April screamed at Mom. They ran through the house like rats in a burning barn. Later that afternoon, Dad got a call from the auto loan company. Apparently, his car wasn't paid off. Because he'd fraudulently transferred ownership to a disabled foundation years ago for tax evasion, it had finally triggered a debt claim and the car had been repossessed after the VIN hit a flagged list I helped circulate. And by helped circulate, I mean I dropped the entire vehicle history to every car auction and charity fraud watchdog in the state. 1 click. Phase 3 came 2 days after that. Mom's nonprofit, which was supposed to help struggling single mothers, got served a notice. A past volunteer, someone I knew personally, came forward after receiving a mysterious file of donation funneling screenshots. She handed it to her lawyer. In 48 hours, the story made the local paper. My mom tried to lie her way out of it, but the photos I took of her laughing over dinner while mocking those same struggling mothers, they made the story too perfect to ignore. Phase 4 wasn't fast. It was quiet. April's identity began to slowly rot from the inside, because all the assets under her name, the house, the gym membership, the second condo, they started slipping. Once banks realized her ID was used to commit fraud, they began locking access until the investigation cleared. April filed complaint after complaint. Nothing worked. That's when she started texting me. At first, threats. Then, apologies. Finally, begging. I never answered. Meanwhile, I kept working. I started volunteering at the very real shelter where Mom had pretended to donate. The women there? They reminded me of what I could have become. I didn't use my full name, just said I was Mara. I helped fix pipes, filed records, reorganized donations. It was the only place that didn't ask why I walked with a limp. But that final phase 5, that was personal. I walked back into the house. It had been nearly a year. I wore black, not for drama, it was just the only color I had left. The front door was unlocked, the walls were stripped bare, the couch was missing, the place reeked of lemon cleaner and regret. They were in the kitchen, sitting in silence. Dad's hands trembled as he read another foreclosure notice. Mom looked pale, makeup smeared under her eyes. April stood against the wall, arms crossed but hollow. Nobody said anything. Until Dad whispered, "What do you want?" I walked over to the kitchen counter and placed something down. The brick. The same one he smashed into my knees. They stared at it like it was a bomb. Then I took out the final piece, a single photo of myself, 10 years old, on the porch knees scraped, smiling like I hadn't learned yet. On the back, I'd written, "You had everything, and you made sure I had nothing. Now you get to keep it." Dad blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" I walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the knob. Then I turned and said calmly, "I'm not taking your house. I'm not draining your money. I'm not destroying you publicly, because none of you are worth that effort. I already took what mattered: your names, your masks, your pride." Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came. April stepped forward, tears welling. "Please." I shook my head. "You dipped my toothbrush in toilet water every morning and called it discipline. You laughed when I couldn't walk. You said I was born useless. And now?" I looked around at the barren house, their pale, shaking hands, the silence so loud it hurt. "Now you get to live like I did, crawling for scraps, knowing no one's coming to help." And I walked out. That was the last time I ever saw them. I moved out of state, changed my name legally, built a life on my terms free of bricks, toilet water, and lies. Sometimes I limp, sometimes I cry when I brush my teeth. But every morning I use a new brush, a clean sink, and the mirror, it shows someone whole. And behind me, no one. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.